Two more sides of the sensory coin is tactile seekers, which this ball would be perfect for, and tactile avoiders, which like smooth things. They don't want to touch anything close to this, sand, grass, anything like that. So today we're going to talk about things that we can do outside the home and inside our home to create a calm environment and minimize meltdowns for both tactile seekers and tactile avoiders. I'm Kara from Health, Home, and Happiness, and I'm glad you're here. We've talked about different sensory issues in the past, and we're continuing on with that. If you look down below, I will link to other videos I have on sensory processing and sensitive kids that are both too sensitive, like overly sensitive, and not sensitive enough, which is usually we call that a seeking behavior. Clothing is going to be big for these kids. So whether they're seeking or they're avoiding, and I'm just going to talk about tactile seeking children at first, and then in the middle of the video we'll switch over and talk about all the same things with tactile avoiding children. I will note down below the timestamp of when we switch over from tactile seeking to tactile avoiding. But because different kids are so different, I would encourage you to listen to the whole video, and I think it might help you understand, if not your child, someone else's child that you interact with a lot. Clothing for children that are tactile seeking can be tight. It can be like itchy, and it can have lots of texture. So a lot of the kids that are tactile seeking, and I've got one of those, love jeans. And this child, she would only wear jeans and actually the stiff button-up shirt. So like lots of kids like the stretchy, and we like it because it's nice to be able to get them dressed in something that's stretchy. It's just easier to get on over toddler heads or whatever. This child wanted to wear jeans and button-up shirts all day for years. And so that's something like kind of tighter, constricting clothing these children will find comforting. Like if you think of what it's like when you're craving a hug, these kids are just craving a hug all the time. So if you can get their clothes to be a little bit more tight, a little bit more stiff, and they will probably like to wear shoes all the time, allow them to wear their shoes in the house. That's something that you can do that just by what they're wearing will minimize their meltdowns. So you can see how easy these solutions are once you figure out your child's sensory need. If you click down below, you'll get to my sensory quiz, and that's where you can kind of take an input of your child's behaviors and figure out where they are on the seeking and avoiding scale of the different sensations. So for tactile avoiding children, stretchy clothes, really soft clothes, if you can get like Hannah Anderson and Land's End tend to have the more stretchy, loose, elastic waistband clothes that these kids love. They want really soft cotton. They're going to probably be bothered more than other children by wool or anything that could barely be perceived as itchy. These kids, sometimes polyester fleece is itchy to them as well. They don't like the sensation of touching that. Those are things that tactile avoiding children will prefer in their wardrobe. So a lot of girls will want to wear the elastic waist pants, like leggings, that they can barely feel what's on. The less seams, the better. And then a dress, so they don't have, it's not as tight usually as a shirt. Dresses are more flowy. And so for boys, like buying their shirts a little bit too big, making sure their pants aren't too tight, those are things that tactile avoiding children will prefer. So we've talked about clothing, which is going to be big for these kids. And we're going to talk about outside sensations. So for tactile seeking children, having like different textures on their bed, like if you can get, there's like jersey sheets, if you could get a waffle weave or some kind of woven blanket, then that's something that they might like, having the variety of textures, and also maybe a flannel or a fleece blanket. Having a variety of textures on their bed, having different toys like this that has a different texture on it. Those kids love that. Tactile seeking children tend to like sand play or water play, so letting them kind of move rocks around or letting them dig in the sandbox, even if it's maybe not convenient because it's cold outside so they can't go outside. So having a sand and water table can be really important for these children. And just exposing them to lots of different textures and allowing them to kind of explore and feel and move, like we talked about in the sensory work video, which I'll link to below, or the heavy work video, which I'll link to below. These children are regulated by feeling a variety of textures and having tight, constricting clothing, wrapping them up like a baby burrito. So if you find your child is becoming overwhelmed, you can kind of like, it's like a big kid swaddle, and I'll still do this for my kids, and they're 9 and 11. And they just love it, and it calms them right down. Joint compression is something that you can ask an OT to show you how to do this. So just like you just pull gently, like you don't want to dislocate their fingers, but having that firm input in there, it just kind of regulates their sensory system. So this is called joint compression. Dry brushing is something that tactile seeking children will really enjoy. So if you can get a dry brush, which I'll link to one below that we use, and then just if you find they're starting to get amped up, or it's before something that you know will amp them up, like going out to playgroup or going out to the park, go ahead and spend just like 2 or 3 minutes brushing their arms and legs and even their belly. And that will give them that input that they crave, and that will help reduce their meltdowns. All of this is stuff that's kind of, you don't have to buy special stuff. That's what's really nice about it. So if you just keep your child's sensory needs in mind when you're already buying them birthday presents, already buying them holiday presents, and then sort of putting in a few minutes here and there before you go into a stressful environment, or after you come out of like an overstimulating or stressful environment, you can provide these sensations that these particular children need to help calm them down. So for children that are tactile avoiding, having silk scarves, that's a fun thing for them to play with. Very soft toys. Smooth wood is something that a lot of these kids will find pleasing to play with, but they're not going to enjoy running barefoot on the grass. And it's probably better, it's going to be overly stressful for them, where you and I can usually get used to the sensation of being barefoot on grass and it feels good. To these kids, like, they can feel every blade of grass, or they don't like the change of going from the sand to the river or sand to the beach. And so just knowing that and not pressuring them to do that, realizing that it's a sensory issue and not a just resistant to try new things issue. And then you can gradually, as they grow up, and a lot of kids grow out of a lot of these sensory issues, you can gradually expose them to more and just kind of make it in a playful, low stress way. But mostly my goal with these sensory videos is to promote understanding and to help you feel empowered as a parent to reduce your child's meltdowns by just providing a little bit of input, whether they need tactile input or they need tactile avoiding. Thanks for joining me. I hope you found that helpful. You can click on the link below and you can take the sensory quiz, which will tell you sort of where your child falls. If your child has extreme sensory issues, I would suggest working with an occupational therapist, and you can find out more about that over there. I would love to have you subscribe. I'm going to come out with more sensory videos in the near future. And if you subscribe right there by clicking on my face, you can subscribe, and then if you hit that notification bell, that is red, then YouTube will email you whenever I put a new video up. Then I'm going to link over here, I'm going to link to a few more videos that I think you'll find helpful. So thanks for joining me, and I will see you soon.